The Ford F-150 Raptor is the most influential pickup truck of the 21st century, creating an entire new segment of high-performance off-road trucks. In just the past few years, we have been gifted with the Ford Raptor R, the Ram TRX, subsequently the Ram RHO, and on the electric front, the Hummer EV pickup. And on their face, these vehicles are absolutely ridiculous. They feature far more power and capability than the average driver is ever going to need or use. They're also insanely oversized, yet that is what fascinates me about them. And it all started because Ford decided to build an off-road focused pickup. So we are going to lay some of the groundwork that allowed the Raptor to become the phenomenon that it is today. And we'll start off. Pickup trucks have been around for a very long time, and people have been off-roading them since the very start. But early iterations of pickup trucks were mostly being used for work opposed to personal transportation. The most pivotal time for the pickup truck would come in the 1970s. This is a time where the US enacted a very strict set of fuel economy and emissions regulations regarding automobiles, with the goal of decreasing pollution and also decreasing reliance on foreign oil. And they did this primarily by making it really expensive to own inefficient vehicles. But at the time, most pickup trucks were still being used for work and not as people's daily drivers. So a group of businesses were able to successfully lobby the US government to create a carve-out for light-duty pickups, arguing that it would be far too expensive for people to continue running their business and using these trucks if they had to comply with these new fuel economy and emission standards. Now, this carve-out did two important things for kind of planting the seeds for the high-performance pickup trucks that we would see later down the line. The first is that it kind of opened the door for more people to use pickup trucks as their personal transportation because these trucks were essentially being subsidized by not having to comply with these new standards. And because they didn't have to really worry about fuel economy or emissions, the engines and the powertrains that were being put into these pickup trucks were pretty unencumbered. Another important development that would come in the 1970s was the proliferation of recreational off-roading. Basically, manufacturers had just figured out how to build reliable four-wheel drive systems that they could put into their production cars. So vehicles like the Jeep CJ5, the Toyota Land Cruiser got super popular, and even Ford had joined in at this time with the Bronco. Now, through the 1970s and into the 80s and 90s, Ford would be really successful in various different desert racing series using modified versions of the F-150. But a road-going version of one of those race trucks was not available. And that is kind of surprising. Because of that government carve-out we mentioned earlier, the popularity of pickup trucks during this time period just absolutely exploded, and we would start to see some early iterations of performance-focused pickups. We would see vehicles like Dodge's Lil Red Express that came out in 1978. Because this vehicle's powertrain was unencumbered by fuel economy or emission standards, it ended up being the quickest car of the year for Car and Driver in 78 with a quarter-mile time of 14.8 seconds. And over the coming decades, all three of the big American automakers would continue iterating on the idea of the performance pickup. Chevrolet would have the SS454 pickup, which was a similar premise to the Lil Red Express, small body with the biggest possible engine. Ford would also have two different iterations of the F-150 Lightning, and this is not the F-150 Lightning you're thinking of today with an electric powertrain. Instead, these trucks were powered by some of the most powerful V8 engines that were available in Ford's lineup at the time. Yet, something that all of these trucks had in common is that they never really became mainstream popular. Most of them were produced for a few model years, and maybe they sold a few thousand units. And it would really be Ford that figured out the secret ingredient. In the mid-2000s, Ford kind of noticed a trend. As pickup trucks were just continuing to become more and more popular, it was also becoming a lot more common for people to take their pickup trucks and put on an aftermarket lift kit and big wheels and tires to make it more capable off-road. And again, remember that Ford has a history of winning these desert racing series. So the special vehicle team was tasked with essentially reverse engineering a pre-runner for road use. What that ended up entailing in practice was taking your standard F-150 and basically completely redesigning the entire suspension. Fox Racing long travel shocks and completely redesigned A-arms gave this truck a wide and aggressive stance that kind of resembled a trophy truck. It would also receive a different front fascia from the normal F-150, and I think Ford made this genius decision to brand this new truck as the Raptor. And importantly, there were two different powertrains you could choose from for the Raptor in the 2010 model year. There was a 5.4 liter V8 that you would find in the standard F-150, or there was a 6.2 liter V8 that you would find in the Super Duty that made around 410 horsepower. And because of that power, it was far more capable, specifically in the desert, compared to traditional off-roading rigs like a Jeep Wrangler or a Toyota Land Cruiser. And most importantly is that the Raptor started to act as a halo product, something that is aspirational and exciting to get people enthusiastic about the Ford brand and the F-150 model line. One of the ways that you see this playing out is people swapping the grille on their normal F-150 to try and get it to resemble the Raptor. And unlike halo products from a lot of different car brands, the F-150 Raptor was and is a massive sales success. Basically, since it went on sale, there was a wait line to get the opportunity to buy one from Ford. The second generation of the Raptor would come out in 2017, and it would continue to push the performance envelope. It would have even beefier suspension, and because of its new aluminum body, it would drop around 500 pounds. But the one thing that was not particularly well received by enthusiasts was the Raptor's new powertrain. As Ford was kind of making this push across their F-150 line towards the EcoBoost series of engines, the Raptor kind of fell victim to this. While the new turbo EcoBoost V6 made more power and significantly more torque than the outgoing V8s, it wasn't really the powertrain that people that are looking to buy this vehicle want. They want something that's aggressive and brawlic and kind of over the top, and a V6 engine just does not provide that experience. This would ultimately kind of open the door a bit and allow some other competitors to enter this segment and eat into the Raptor's market share. And that would come namely in the form of the Ram TRX. Now, this vehicle was produced during a time where Stellantis, Jeep, Dodge, Ram, they were basically trying to put the Hellcat engine into anything that they could possibly imagine. So what better place to put it than a Ram pickup and create a Raptor competitor? But importantly, the TRX was not a direct competitor to the Raptor. It was actually positioned above because of that V8 and additional off-road capability. Of course, Ford was not going to take this lying down, so they took their own supercharged V8 out of the GT500, threw that into the Raptor, created the Raptor R, and then priced it and added the accompanying equipment to position it even above the TRX. Now, while Ford and Ram were entering into this arms race, there was one American manufacturer that was notably absent, and that would be General Motors. So, while both Ford and Ram were creating all of this excitement and enthusiasm around their brand and their model line, GM seemed pretty content to sit on the sidelines. They did make one half-hearted attempt to enter this segment by coming out with a beefed up version of the Silverado ZR2, and this might have been a good competitor to the original Ford Raptor. Things since then have escalated 100-fold. GM would alternatively try and push this segment forward by coming out with the Hummer EV pickup. And this vehicle is equally outlandish to the TRX or the Raptor R because it's a 9,000-pound EV that is the size of a school bus and is very capable off-road. But kind of tying back to the people that actually buy these cars, what this segment is all about, this wasn't particularly well received either. And if we want to know where this segment is headed in the future, I don't think we look at GM's EVs, we look back at the Raptor. After a decade and a half of wild success with the F-150 Raptor, Ford has now started to give other vehicles in their model line the Raptor treatment. And that would come in the form of the Bronco Raptor and the Ranger Raptor. Now, the Ranger Raptor is a pretty obvious choice because they're kind of transitioning the Raptor branding down market by applying it to Ford's midsize truck. This both gives additional capability, but also credibility to the Ranger model line. And it is a similar story with the Bronco. The Bronco being kind of a newer product that already has a tremendous amount of hype built up around it, coming out with a Raptor version just kind of keeps that hype going, keeps people excited, gives them something to aspire to with this high performance off-road version of the Bronco. The bigger question that leads to, though, is will Ford, giving the Raptor treatment to their midsize pickup and their off-road SUV, have the same effects and create a new segment the same way that it did with the F-150 Raptor? Toyota, for example, has been really successful in selling TRD Pro versions of the 4Runner and the Tacoma, although these aren't direct competitors to the Ranger Raptor or the Bronco Raptor because they're lacking some of the extra power. You wonder, as Ford comes in to compete in this segment, does Toyota kind of step up their game? Could it be possible, now that Toyota has refreshed both of these models, that they come out with some higher end trims that are more kind of this desert racing vibe and less focused on traditional trail driving? Then you look at a brand like Jeep, where the Wrangler is facing some pretty stiff competition from the Bronco, and you wonder if they come out with a new high performance version of the Wrangler that falls somewhere short of that 392 version, but is still able to compete directly with the Bronco Raptor. All in all, the F-150 Raptor has been a tremendously successful vehicle for Ford. It created this entire new segment of high-performance off-road pickups and has also helped to act as a halo product to drive excitement around the brand and the model line. With Ford now giving the Raptor treatment to other models within their lineup, it will be interesting to see if these achieve the same levels of sales success and influence. All in all, it is really cool to see what Ford has done here, and I'm sure they are going to continue to push this market forward.